devotees and Maharaj. We now move on to our first plenary session of the evening titled Preserving Srila Prabhupada's Legacy by Preaching Krishna Consciousness. In this session, our ISKCON Gurus will share their realizations on how each of us can carry forward Srila Prabhupada's mission and keep his legacy alive through preaching Krishna consciousness to every town and village. I would now like to invite the panels for this session, His Holiness Bhanu Swami Maharaj and His Holiness Bhakti Vinod Swami Maharaj, and the moderator, His Grace Chiranjeeva Prabhu, to the stage.
Hare Krishna. முதல் நிகழ்வாக ஸ்ரீல பிரபுபாதர் நமக்காக விட்டு சென்ற அவருடைய இந்த பாரம்பரியத்தை பிரச்சாரத்தின் மூலம் பாதுகாப்பது எப்படி என்ற தலைப்பில் தவத்திரு பானுசுவாமி மகாராஜ் மற்றும் தவத்திரு பக்தி வினோத் சுவாமி மகாராஜ் அவர்களோடு இணைந்து திரு சிரஞ்சீவா பிரபு அவர்களுடைய உரையை வழங்கவிருக்கின்றனர். இதில் நாம் குருமார்கள் தாங்கள் அனுபவங்களை, உணர்வுகளை அனைத்தையும் பகிர்ந்து கொள்வார்கள். ஸ்ரீல பிரபுபாதரின் நோக்கத்தை நாமும் எப்படி பிரச்சாரத்தின் மூலமாக ஒவ்வொரு ஊருக்கும் கிராமத்துக்கும் எடுத்து சென்று அவரின் பாரம்பரியத்தை எப்படி பாதுகாப்பது என்பதை பற்றியும் அவர்கள் கூறுவார்கள். அவர்களின் இந்த ஆனந்தமயமான அனுபவங்களையும் ஆழமான பார்வைகளையும் தயவு செய்து அனைவரும் கவனமாக கேட்கலாம் என்று இந்த நேரத்தில் வினவிக் கொள்கிறோம். இப்பொழுது இந்த உரை ஆரம்பமாக உள்ளது. ஹரே கிருஷ்ணா.
Hare Krishna. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasna Padaya Srimati Japadaga Swami Nitnamne Namacha Padaya Nita Kripa Padayane Gorakata Damadaya Nagrakram Tarine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasna Padaya Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitnamne Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesa Sunyavadi Pasacha Deshatarine. Hare Krishna. We are very fortunate here tonight to have His Holiness Bhanu Maharaj and His Holiness Bhakti Vinod Swami with us here on this stage to enlighten us more about Srila Prabhupada, his teachings, his legacy. Because after all, this ISKCON movement was started by Srila Prabhupada to fulfill the order of his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, to preach Krishna consciousness first to the English-speaking world and eventually all over the world. Srila Prabhupada was able to actually fulfill more than the instruction given to him. And yet, he has left something for us to do too, so that we are not left unengaged. So, as members of ISKCON, it's very important for us to also understand who Srila Prabhupada is, what his teachings are, how for us to imbibe his teaching in our heart, and to also assist him in his continuous preaching of Krishna consciousness, to expand the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. So we'll start Bhanu Maharaj to maybe as the founder and okay, here it is. You were with Srila Prabhupada quite early, the first time they came to India. So from your observation and also Prabhupada's life, what are the sacrifices that Prabhupada has to go through to bring Krishna consciousness for the entire world? And how can devotees practically express gratitude to him in their daily life?
Well, I gave a little presentation this morning, and I noticed that I stated that Srila Prabhupada preached, but it was not easy. He had no advantages. He had no money. People were not listening in India. Do we need a translation in Tamil or something? No? Okay. So Prabhupada began the movement, and even in India, people weren't listening. He went to the Gaudiya Math when he renounced, they wouldn't listen. They wouldn't print anything. So he went on his own, he began to print, and he had no money. He had to raise his own funds. He had to edit his own things. He had to supervise the printing of whatever he wrote, including Bhagavatam, everything he did. And then he had to sell the books also on his own, one person, nobody to distribute. So this was India. He went to America with no money. Again, he had to start with zero, and he was living in the Bowery for some time, which is the drunk area. It's the lowest part of New York, and there's drunks and drug addicts everywhere. And he was living there. Finally, he got some support and opened a storefront, and he began the preaching movement. So he began with nothing, and then he started preaching. Now we have everything. We have money, we have reputation, we have Srila Prabhupada's name, we have books and everything. Prabhupada started with nothing. No money, no books, no reputation, nothing. They didn't know about yoga, they didn't know about mantra, they didn't know about vegetarian food, nothing. But Prabhupada has made all of these things known to the world. So we should take advantage of what we have and then expand as much as we can with that. And noting that Srila Prabhupada had to put great effort with nothing to build a worldwide organization in like 10 years. So we should think of how many years we have left and see how much we can do in that time. Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, just from your personal experience and observation, have you first-hand seeing Prabhupada making the sacrifice or challenges that he had to go through? I mean, when you were traveling with Prabhupada, do you have any first-hand observation of what Prabhupada has to go through?
Oh, okay,
the
yeah.
sacrifice he made?
So that was in 1971. Prabhupada came to India, and he brought some American devotees. So in total, about 20 devotees. Everywhere he went, they would arrange preaching programs for him. But most of the people were not that philosophical, and he would be teaching about, you're not the body, this and that, whatever. It was beyond most people. And if there were wealthy people, he would ask them for land. Nobody gave. So he went from person to person, Raja, this king, that king, whatever, and he was asking for land. They didn't give. Finally, of course, he got a donation in Vrindavan. One wealthy person gave some land in Vrindavan. That started the Vrindavan temple. Someone gave in Hyderabad. So those two places. Other places, he had to buy. Bombay, Mayapur, he had to buy the land and construct. What was no money in India? They were making life members for 1,000 rupees per member. Even that was difficult. So the money came from America. So this was the problem in the beginning of the movement. Prabhupada had to really work, and he had to encourage the devotees from America and other countries to donate for establishing in India. So this was how Prabhupada began, and he was very determined. And of course, if they didn't give, then he had to buy land.
Thank you, Maharaj. We hear often devotees talk about preserving Prabhupada's legacy. What does it really mean?
That's a very general question. I think it's also very deep. What does it generally mean to say preserving Prabhupada's legacy? I think if you look at the contribution of Prabhupada, it's something very, very unique. And Prabhupada's great legacy is that he, unlike many previous acharyas, was charged with the responsibility for spreading the holy name, Krishna consciousness, all over the world. That was the expectation of the previous acharyas, according to the prediction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and also his guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So he inherited a particular type of an assignment to preach all over the world, especially in the Western world. That's very special, number one. And Prabhupada also knew the weight of that assignment. He did not think that it's going to be done very easily. But he prepared for it. He took that very seriously. And he carried that not with, like Banu Maharaj explained just now, not that he had a full plan, he had all the finance for it. You know, he took a loan from the bank and we get into a project and we know what we're going to do, we drawn up the plans. It's not like that. He had very well a plan about Krishna consciousness in his mind, but the resources were not there. But then you can see that he was depending on Krishna very much. And in his poem in Jaladuta, you will see that written. I have no resources, I don't have even bhakti, I don't have even knowledge from the Vedas, although they call me this, but I am simply depending on your mercy, I have faith in the holy name. That's how he went. So Prabhupada's greatest resource was his humility, his enthusiasm, his complete faith that this will happen. Because it has been mentioned by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prithvite ache jata nagarade gram sarvatra prachar hoibe mora naam. This is an amazing thing that we should note. Maharaj mentioned he had no resources, material resources. But he had faith and he knew that this will come to pass, it will happen. That legacy of faith in Krishna, faith in the previous Acharya's words, faith in Lord Chaitanya's words, faith that the holy name is everything, and if people take to the holy name, things will happen, I think is the most important aspect of the legacy of Prabhupada. His faith that things will happen as per the prediction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, if we simply endeavor in that direction, according to those instructions given by the Acharyas. So I think in terms of legacy and what we need to do for preserving the legacy, if you look at the history, Prabhupada is like the third generation of great, amazing devotees come from Lord Chaitanya. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had his disciples, the Swamis, and all of them together. That was one generation. This was in 1486 he appeared, and 1533 he wound up his pastimes. That's 48 years. And at that time in India was the Mughal dynasty, Babur. 1526 Babur started. And Lord Chaitanya was there on this planet when the Mughal started ruling, Babur started ruling. That was 1526 to 1533 when Lord Chaitanya disappeared. It's about 7 to 8 years. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was here during the Babur rule. That's the time that he was giving instructions to the Goswamis and building up things for the future. And then after that generation, you have Jiva Goswami, you have his Siksha disciples, Narottam, Shamananda Pandit, Srinivas Acharya, and all of them. Then after that, you see a big lull of about 200 years. Nothing much happened. And all these Aul, Baul, Kartabej, Jati Gosai, all of these Apasampradayas came up. And then you have Bhaktivinoda Thakur around 1838. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, did an amazing job of actually bringing out Krishna consciousness, especially Lord Chaitanya's teachings, and putting it in a respectable manner because people had a very bad, low opinion of Lord Chaitanya and his followers. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur did not even get a copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita to read and find out. And he got the first copy. And he looked for it and he got it after 8 years from this particular gentleman. And then he, started adopting Lord Chaitanya's teachings and started preaching. And then his son Bhaktisiddhanta Sri Thakur and Prabhupada, a powerful trio in this third generation. And Prabhupada is like the person who, if you look at a, relay race, he took the mantle across towards the end and took it around all over the world and really finished it. He exploded the preaching by taking it all over the world, and they accomplished everything that needs to be done. Prithvite ache jata nagarde gram sarvatra prachar hoibe mora naam. This happened. And he said, we have got a foothold now. The Krishna conscious movement has taken a foothold. And the Vishwa Vaishnava Rajya Sabha that they wanted to start, including the Goswamis onwards, it has happened. The ISKCON movement has happened. And there be, devotees all over the world, and it started happening. This is the legacy. Now we are like, you can say, the fourth generation of people. So there is an amazing contribution that has come from these three generations. What will the fourth generation do in order to persist, sustain, and move it further? This is an important topic to discuss. How to sustain the legacy, that explosion of Krishna consciousness as Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada has carried all over the world. It's our duty to think about it and do our duty of adding to what Prabhupada has already done, because he has already done a lot of the difficult work, like Maharaj mentioned. For us, he's given the books, he's given everything, the foundation. That's why he's the founder, Acharya. Beyond that, we need to do what is necessary with all these resources and expand the preaching unlimitedly. I think that is the preservation of the legacy.
Maharaj. That was a very elaborate description. Banu Maharaj, since when we talk about ISKCON, it can't separate it from preaching, because Srila Prabhupada's life is all about preaching. So if anyone really claim to be a member of ISKCON, can they separate themselves from a preaching mission?
Of course, preaching takes many forms, like distributing prasadam is preaching. And if they do that, they're still in the movement. Direct preaching is there. Book distribution is there. Even organizing is there. Projects is also preaching. So there's so many aspects of preaching. The main idea behind the preaching, of course, is that we present the philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as presented in the Goswami's books and as presented by Srila Prabhupada. That's one thing. So we have to preach that. The other is how to preach it to the people at this time. So in Bhakti Vinod's time, he preached and he wrote books. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's time, he preached by getting a printing press and making weekly and daily newspapers. That's one thing. Plus publishing unfound or rare manuscripts, etc. Prabhupada preached by establishing BBT, printing and making commentaries on Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. So that's how he preached. And then, of course, he went around the world and preached. Now, what do we do in terms of preaching? Of course, whatever Prabhupada did, we do that. We do prasadam distribution, have festivals, have Harinam Sankirtan on the street, distribute books, etc. But we also have to preach in ways that people will understand. So it may be different. The people of 1970 are different from the people 50 years later. And their vocabulary is different. Their music is different. Everything is different. Society is different. Their values are different. So somehow we have to, pierce the barriers and preach in terms of their understanding and attract them to that. So the challenge to our preaching is to find out how to communicate with the present generation, which keeps changing every 10 years. And we have to keep changing our techniques and our words and our concepts to fit the present society. So that's what our preaching has to do. Of course, it can accomplish all these different ideas and things we do, but we may have to adapt it to the situation.
But Maharaj, you talk about adapting to the changes of the time, but sometimes you also hear about Prabhupada disciples saying, well, in the old days, it's done this way and that way.
Yeah.
So how do you reconcile?
Yeah. So this is the challenge we have. By nature, we are a conservative movement. Prabhupada says, okay, whatever Lord Chaitanya says, we do that. So our philosophy never changes. However, the preaching may change. We do not do kirtan in the same way they did in Lord Chaitanya's time. In Lord Chaitanya's time, the style the kirtan they did was quite classical by our standards today, even though it wasn't classical by those standards at that time. But for our present generation, nobody probably can learn all those tals and ragas and whatever they sing. So our kirtan is much simpler, and of course we have to appeal to the local audience as well. So in China, they have Chinese tunes, for instance. Other places, they may have Western tunes. So we have to change something for the common people. That, fortunately, does not contradict our philosophy because Nama, the holy name, is for every place and is not bound by rules. It's for every time and any place. Not bound by rules, so we can adapt it to all sorts of circumstances, unlike other processes. So we do have to, adapt to the present time. No organization can succeed and carry on into the future unless they adapt to the present situation. If they don't, they'll fail. So we also have to do that. At the same time, keep something unchanging. That is like conservative philosophy or whatever. We can't change the philosophy. Certain principles we cannot change. Other things we have to adapt to the present situation.
Thank you, Maharaj. And Bhakti Maharaj. Prabhupada spent a lot of his time, especially when everyone's sleeping, he's up in the middle of the night translating Bhagavatam, Chaitanya and he's giving his commentary. So how important is Prabhupada books in our ISKCON movement? Especially nowadays, there's so many books by other devotees being written. So relatively speaking, where does Prabhupada's book stand amongst all these different literatures?
I'm actually giving a whole seminar on that tomorrow. On the books, but since you've asked this topic, Prabhupada treasured his books. And he said, everything is in my books. And he spent precious time writing those books. He made a comment that these books are not written by me, they are written by Krishna. He made a comment that Krishna is sitting on my shoulders and dictating to me, and I'm writing. He made a comment separately, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is writing these things through me. So Prabhupada also explained the content of his books in this manner. And he said, have you ever seen an author read his own books? And his disciples said, no. Once you've done that, they'll write another book. He said, at that time, I'm reading these books because they're not written by me. They're written by Krishna. So much for the content of Prabhupada's books according to his own value. So, we don't need to talk much about it. They are very valuable, no doubt. And we need to understand that they were very precious to Prabhupada also, not because he is the author alone, because they contained information about the absolute truth and easily accessible to the conditioned souls of this time, place, and circumstance. That is the precious thing. Communication of the absolute truth, knowledge about the absolute truth is accessible and available to any Tom, Dick, and Harry, any conditioned soul, if he simply reads Prabhupada's books. That is the greatness. And therefore, it's necessary for us to distribute these books without any judgment and also make it accessible to everybody by educating them on the content of these books and considering this to be a great legacy. You asked me the question earlier, what's a great legacy? We should preserve the legacy of Prabhupada's books and the content in those books. Like I say, you need to get it into the generation of people according to the time, place, and circumstance, which Bhanu Maharaj already explained.
Maybe just a few concluding words, Bhanu Maharaj, in relationship to the present generation, how we can best imbibe that preaching spirit, the fire-up spirit.
When Srila Prabhupada was present between the 1960 to 1977, all the devotees got inspiration from Srila Prabhupada personally. Of course, he had his teachings and his books, etc., but his very presence was also encouraging to all the devotees because of his great determination, his enthusiasm, his knowledge, and his preaching spirit. So Prabhupada departed in 1977, and we have maybe 3 generations going by after that. And people may think, well, Prabhupada's not there, so we can't take inspiration. But actually, Prabhupada is the founder Acharya of ISKCON. And that means that as the founder, he's eternally present in the movement. So even though you're not the direct disciple of Srila Prabhupada, you may be 1 or 2 generations later, there is no problem. You still have that direct connection with Srila Prabhupada. Fortunately, as well as all of his books, we have videos and audios available with Srila Prabhupada. So there's lots of ways in which you can directly contact Srila Prabhupada. So you can get the inspiration from Prabhupada's words, which is the most important aspect. As Srila Prabhupada himself said, I just followed the order of my spiritual master. He gave me some instructions and I followed it. So the teachings and the words are very important. If we can hear the instructions of Srila Prabhupada, get inspiration from that, then we should be enthusiastically try to execute those instructions. And as if Srila Prabhupada were actually present, not that he has disappeared in 1977. Yeah? He's still present, and you take inspiration from his words, and you enthusiastically preach.
Thank you, Maharaj. Bhaktivinoda Maharaj. Concluding words to inspire the devotees in preaching.
I've been coming to the Malaysian convention for quite some time, and I see that there's a lot of enthusiasm in preaching and expanding the movement. I explained about the legacy, and I think that everybody is watching up in the parampara. Bhanu Maharaj just said that Prabhupada is present. You can take his association through his books. And it doesn't matter if you're not a disciple of Prabhupada, anybody who sincerely follows and reads his books will be able to get his association. Similarly, this is a very live, dynamic Harinam Sankirtan movement, and it also is a live, dynamic presence of all the acharyas. If you go to the Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan, you will see Prabhupada's quote pasted on the wall in his room. He's saying there that the Goswamis would meet here regularly, discuss Krishna consciousness and how to spread it. And Prabhupada goes further to say, if a person wants, he can access them here, if he sincerely so prays and desires, because they are still here discussing. And it is also a fact that Prabhupada met with Rupa Goswami there in that Radha Damodar temple. Later, when the devotees came and visited Vrindavan and in America, they went back and asked Prabhupada, it seems you met with Rupa Goswami here. Prabhupada said, that's an open secret, and then changed the topic. He didn't deny it. So Prabhupada met with Rupa Goswami, got instructions, and all the acharyas are watching. So just imagine, if they want to expand the preaching in Malaysia, whom are they expecting to work through? I'm sure it's the Mata Amritandamayi Mutt, or it must be the next door Murugan temple. It must be Chinmaya Mission, isn't it? Who is he expecting? All of us here, all of you Malaysian devotees here, Nitai Gauru Premanande. So every one of you is being looked at, and there's an expectation from everybody down that you will do it. You will do it. You will take that book, you will distribute it, you will talk to that person and tell him to chant Hare Krishna. You will introduce him to Krishna. And that's the expectation from everybody here in Malaysia. All of you devotees have a very important role to play because they are watching you. And if you get out and do it, it will happen. It will happen. Prabhupada said, I just got out and did it. I just tried it. He didn't think that it's going to happen. He said, it should be done. Somebody should do it. And he went, got into a ship, had 2 heart attacks, went out and did it. And it happened, he said. If you also, in the same way, within this area, Prithivite Ache Jata Nagarati Gram, in this particular area, if you also think so with the same faith and do it, it will happen. I think that's the wonderful thing we should all have faith in, and I think you're doing very great. These conventions have been an amazing way of inspiring people, and I think you will do it. Malaysian Yatra ki, Hare Krishna Convention ki, Nittai Guru Premanande.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, for your enlightening, inspiring words. Now, shall we give to Maharaj a very enthusiastic Hari Bol for the inspiring words? Hari Bol! Hari Bol! Hari Bol! Thank you, Maharaj.